and welcome to another episode of Tech Thursday with me, David Smith, here at OM System. I hope you're all well. I hope you've had a great day, or you're about to have a great day, or you're having a great night, wherever you are in the world. I hope it's all looking pretty good. Thanks for joining me on this live session. Please feel free to drop any tech questions into the chat and I'll try my very best to answer them. As always, Tech Thursday, which by the way, feels like it's been quite some time since we did a Tech Thursday. In reality, I don't really think it's been that long. We've done a lot of Ask Me Anything sessions in between. But this Tech Thursday is all about the AF menu in our fantastic OM-1 camera. Now, some of you joined me today for a more intimate Zoom session where we've been going over the menu in more detail, and the AF menu was a big part of that. So some of you will know a little bit more about it than you did earlier on anyway, but I'm here for the rest of you. And of course, if you can't follow along for the whole of the live stream, then you can pick this up anytime after we've finished, and it will be on the YouTube channel forever and a day. So make sure that you are popping your questions in. Remember, I'm on my own as well, so I'm pressing all the buttons. So if it looks a little bit protracted at times, it's because I'm out of practice, because I feel like I haven't done this on my own properly for ages. I wasn't very well when we did the AMA, so I was only in the background, which was a lot easier. Put your questions into the chat for me, and I'll do my very best to answer them. I'll say a couple of hellos to people from all around the world. We've got people in America, Florida, the UK, Surrey and Shepshed, Washington, DC, Canada, loads of people. So thank you very much for joining me so far. The Tech Thursday today is about the AF menu in the OM-1. So I'm going to hook up an OM-1 camera and we'll go straight into that menu and start dissecting the different settings that are going on in there. But of course, your questions don't have to be about that particular area of the camera or indeed that camera itself. So if you've got questions about lenses or other cameras or other functions and settings, then please do feel free to pop them into the chat here and I will raise them up for everybody to see and we'll see if we can go through them. And you've got me for about an hour, hopefully, if things go well. So without further ado, let's switch on an OM-1 that I've got just over here. I'm going to kind of rely on my very long arms to try and do the menu system. Let's see, excuse me, if this will work. There we go. Fantastic stuff. So we've got a few things to look at over there. We've got our little Robin friend on top of, oh, is that a 150-400 f4.5 Pro Series lens? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Finally, we have production under control to the point where the individual members of the team do get to hang on to a sample to show it off and to teach people how to use it as well. So that's really good to have that in there. There is an OM System TG7 just a little bit lower down and a cactus and a little Lego man in there, just as something for us to have a little look at whilst we're going through some of the options. Now, I'm going to press menu on the camera. I might move my microphone a little bit and scooch around this way so that's a little bit easier. Nobody needs to look at me, so we'll just look at the big screen over here that shows our AF menu. And the AF menu is nice and easy to distinguish in the OM-1 because it's the green one. It's the third tab along the top, and it's the green tab. If you need a quick reminder of how to cycle through these menu tabs, you've got your front dial, which will take you through the different tabs at the top here, and then the rear dial, which will take you through the pages within each tab. So it's nice and easy to handle and a lot sort of more intuitive than some of our previous menus to look at. Now, there are a few things that you'll find in the AF menu that are replicated from the Super Control Panel. If you don't know what the Super Control Panel is, it's the quick menu that comes up on your screen when you press the OK button just there. Now, what you may have noticed when I did that is that I pressed the button and instantly went away. The reason for that is because I'm being all kind of handsy in front of the camera, and the camera's got an eyepiece sensor that when it detects something, it removes what's on the screen immediately, and that includes the menu. So before we start, a quick tip that I'm going to give out if you are presenting like me, if you're a teacher, or if you just want to turn off the eye sensor so that it doesn't continually trigger all the time, is that you can press the live view button, which is the one that looks like a sort of screen in two brackets to the right of the menu key on the OM-1, press and hold that button down, and then that'll take you straight to the options for the electronic viewfinder's auto switch. So that's the sensor that detects proximity and takes everything away, basically. So I'm going to switch that off for this session. And then that means that I can raise things like the super control panel and the menu. I can wave anything in front of there and it won't go away. But the super control panel will automatically disengage after about 8 seconds, just like that. So the menu itself, the deep menu, which we'll get by pressing this button here, that one won't go away unless we press the shutter button or we press the menu key again to come out of that. So wave that in front of there, nothing happens, and it won't automatically disengage either. So let's have a little closer look now that we've done that and dished out the first tip. Don't forget to ask as many questions as you like. It's so nice to see you all in here. Oh, we've got Poland in as well, Southern Indiana, Horwich. Fantastic stuff. And David's just verified that we're nice and loud and clear, which is always good to know because, like I say, I'm on my own. So it's really key for any of you out there to let me know if you feel like there is a technical problem. And if there is a technical problem, it'll either be on my side or it'll be on yours. But if it's on mine, I'll do my best to fix it. Okay, let's delve into this. So, as I said, some of the options in here are replicated from the super control panel, starting with this first one. Now, the first option is the AF mode. So if we press OK on the, it's me again, pressing the wrong button. If we press OK on the AF mode, then we're presented with the autofocusing options as well as the manual focus option. These are the things that are also present in the super control panel. So you've got the single autofocus option here. You've also got continuous autofocus, where the camera will continually focus all the time whilst you're pressing the button, or the relative button, which we'll come on to. You have the manual focus option. Now, of course, there are a couple of different ways you can get to manual focus. If you're lucky enough to have some pro lenses that have a focus clutch, which pulls backwards and pushes forwards, you can use that to swap between autofocus and manual focus. But of course, you can select it in here or in the super control panel as well. You can also assign a button, because you can customize your camera to do many different things in many different ways. You can assign a button on the camera to instantly turn your lens through manual focus. So we've got that option there. We've then got our continual autofocus plus tracking. Now, this option is probably more useful when you're trying to track a subject with the OM-1 specifically, when you're trying to track a subject that's not designed within the subject detection system. So we've got subject detection, which we'll look at today as well. And in there, you've got planes, trains, motorbikes, motorcars, birds, dogs and cats. And if you're looking for a subject that's not within that category or fits within any one of those, then you can use CAF plus tracking quite nicely. And that's where I'd probably use it when there's no specific subject within the list. You've then got the pre-MF option. This is the preset manual focus, where you can tell the camera to jump to a very specific distance of focal point in sort of time and space. When you want to hit a very specific distance in the distance. And the preset MF can be used through the super control panel with a specific measuring tool that is still sort of approximate, but it works quite well. So pre-MF is an option you have in there. And then, of course, the fantastic Starry AF for taking photographs of the night sky, which is a very, very simple autofocusing option in terms of what you need to know as a user. There are very few options within there, but sometimes people look at it in a slightly overcomplicated manner, when actually it's just a focusing option as the same as single autofocus or continuous autofocus as well. And we'll have a little look at those options to see what you might need to change and when. I think in the chat, there are a couple of people that joined me on the Zoom this afternoon. So thank you for popping back in. It's good to see you as well. All right, let's go back through our options. So just for the moment, I'm going to select single autofocus, and we'll change that as we do some tests on some of these settings as well. By the way, feel free to share the feed. So if you're in any groups or forums where you think like-minded photographers, they don't have to be OM system users, anybody who think you'd be interested in this feed, please do share it. There's loads of links for you to share the feed as well. And keep your eye on the events page over at OMDS events, and of course the YouTube coming up channel, because we've got loads going on starting tomorrow to celebrate OM system. So keep your eye on those as well. But share lots, that's what we like. Right, so the next option here that we're going to look at is AF+MF. And this seems like a really obvious option that you might want to choose. It is any autofocus mode plus manual focus override. So if we switch this on, and go back and look at our available AF modes, now every single one of them has the MF option at the side of it. Now, what that means is that whilst you can autofocus using your preferred button system, however you've set that up to be either front shutter release or back button focusing from the AF on button, that if you don't quite feel that the camera has locked onto the area that you want, you can then turn the focus ring and it will automatically override from that position that it locked onto with manual focus. So you're kind of tweaking that as you go. Which is really, really useful. Now, I don't particularly use that because I fumble around quite a lot and I press things that I'm not supposed to press. So my personal preference is to just stick with autofocus unless I'm shooting macro, and then I'm full manual anyway. But it's a really helpful option to some people to have that manual focus override. Now, let's come back out of there and look at the next option down, which is our Starry Sky AF settings. So the thing to know about Starry Sky is that predominantly it's going to be used in a darker environment. So if you're sitting in a lit room or if it's daylight and you try and test it out on your camera, the chances are it may work, but it's more than likely not going to do anything at all. It's not going to try and focus because it's detecting far too much light, and the system knows that it should be looking for tiny little pinpricks of light in a very dark environment. So if you have tried it and thought, well, that doesn't really do much, that could be the reason why. If we look into these settings, you'll see here we've got three main options, and that's what I mean. It's really, really simple for Starry AF. You've got your priority settings for Starry AF, which are either accuracy or speed. And if you think about this in a really simple manner, speed is if you're hand holding your camera and you want to very quickly be able to grab focus. And accuracy is if you've got a little bit more time, perhaps the camera's on a tripod, and you can kind of let it do its thing a little bit more specifically. So you can choose either one of those, as is the situation that you're in. As you can see there, accuracy requires some processing time in there. So tripod is best used for that one. Now, the AF operation is simply which button will trigger the Starry AF and why. What will it do once it's triggered it from there? So if we go in there, we've got three options. Let's start with this one over here. This is the one that's probably not the most recommended, so to speak. So this is the front shutter release, the front shutter release button on your camera. Now, you can set the front shutter release to be the Starry Sky AF focusing option on a halfway press. But what you'll need to remember is that if you are pre-focusing using that button and then not taking the image straight away, not starting the exposure straight away, the next time you go back and press that button, the camera is going to try and refocus once more. So if you want to focus and lock it and then release from a shutter button without a refocus, you're going to choose one of the next two options. So with that, you've either got starts with the AF on button and stops by releasing it. So you'll need to press and hold AF on until it locks on and then release it. Or my personal preference, which is the default anyway, is the AF on stop start. So it's a single press of the AF on, the button on the back of the camera, which will start the focusing process. And when the camera finds focus, it will lock and stop. Or if you find that it's hunting for whatever reason, it's not finding focus, you can press the AF button again to stop that action. And that's my preference, really, because it enables me to lock the focus on the Starry Sky and then at any point press the shutter release and not worry about the camera trying to refocus once more. Let's have a quick look into the chat, because I think I've seen a Starry Sky question that, fantastic, from our very own Ivor Rackham. I'm just going to pop this up here. Hello, Ivor. Hope you're well. Ivor is a writer and an OM system ambassador for us. Let's have a look. Ivor's asking, does Starry Sky AF focus on the stars or a bit nearer to some foregrounds in focuses too? So basically, that's a great question, Ivor. What Starry Sky is doing is it's starting to hunt for focus from the infinity point back towards you. So it's starting very far away and it's coming back towards you. So realistically, what you should expect is that it will grasp focus on the stars very, very quickly. Now, if there are no stars in the sky because it's cloudy, then it will continue to retreat the focus away from infinity, more towards you until it grasps on something else. And then perhaps then it may get some foreground, such as mountains or buildings or even nearer. It will probably not like anything that's very, very close to you, because that's not what the AF is intended to do. So yes, it definitely could do that, given the right circumstances. Brilliant question. Thank you very much, Ira. Good. So that's our Starry Sky AF. So let's come back out of there. The last option in there, which is an option that I'm going to explain, and it covers a few different areas. So we'll see this release priority option 3 or 4 times in the AF menu as we go through. So I'm going to give it a good explanation here once, and then you can kind of refer back to the same concept. Okay, so what release priority means is if release priority is off, it means that the camera will not release the shutter. It won't expose the image if it's not locked focus anywhere. Okay, so if it hasn't managed to lock focus, if it's hunted and it's stopped trying because it can't lock that focus, no matter how much you press on that shutter release button, it won't take the image. Now, that's a great option if you're doing Starry Sky because you don't want a blurry out of focus image. You don't want to think that you've pressed it and go, oh, it's just taken the shot, when actually when it finishes, it's very blurry and out of focus. You don't want that. So you want the camera to respond and say, I can't take the shot. There are some instances where you would want the camera to take an out of focus shot, not specifically on purpose per se, but let's say, for example, if we were taking a sequential burst of images using continual autofocus, if the camera had started to take the burst and it had locked focus on each frame, lock, and it had taken the image every single time, and then it got to a frame where it couldn't grasp the autofocus, you would want it to try. And if it couldn't, to just take an out of focus image and then move on to the next one so that it can retry to focus. Rather than sort of halting the process of the sequence, you'll want to allow it to go through. So I would rather take 15 to 20 shots and have maybe 1 or 2 in the middle that weren't in focus because the camera couldn't grasp focus, but it took the shot anyway, then take 6 shots and then it get halted because the camera's not able to focus. So in those instances, sequential burst with continual autofocus, you'll have release priority on. It's the default in the camera anyway. But in instances of single shots, you definitely want the release priority off. And that's your Starry Sky AF settings there. Now, let's go back and have a little look at what else we've got. Options for AF by pressing this little icon here, which always refers to the front shutter release. So the front shutter release that's on the front of the camera, just above the front dial. With this in mind, this will all depend on how you like to set up your camera. Are you exclusively using back button focus on the rear of the camera, on the AF to shoot? Do you shoot SAF or CAF all the time? Now, for me, the option would be to AF by half pressing the front shutter in single autofocus, but in continual autofocus, you probably would be engaging in back button because you're probably taking a sequential burst of things moving fast. So you don't want that on the front button. So you would disable your autofocus from the front and it would be exclusively riding from the AF on button on the back. But again, this is all personal preference. So you'll need to set that up how you prefer to do that. So then the next option we've got here is, do you want to allow AF on in manual focus mode? This is a really interesting option, actually. Let's switch this on. So we go, yes, we'll allow AF on in manual focus mode. Let's go ahead and have a little look at our options here. I'm going to press the OK button. You'll notice as well that what I've done is I've removed all of the annotations from around the edge. I've taken away the information. Okay, I can bring that information back by pressing the info button and sort of bring it all back. But for the purpose of this is quite messy. So I'm just going to press info a couple of times until it all disappears. Now, if I press the OK button, I can bring up my super control panel. I'm going to choose manual focus. Okay. My data comes back temporarily, then it will just all go away. But I've chosen manual focus now, which means that I can only focus using the front ring. However, I have allowed the AF on button on the rear to override that. Okay, so my front shutter button is not going to do that. Pressing that now, you can see the 88 image buffer counter flashing away in the corner. That's me trying to halfway press, nothing's happening. And I'm in manual focus, but if I press AF on, it's completely overridden. So if you are doing a manual focus exercise and you think, actually, I'm really struggling here, I'm just going to let the AF take over, you can hit that button if the manual override is switched on. So manual focus with the lens, AF on the back to quickly bring it back. And this is also a really good exercise in seeing how fast that focus is. So this lens is completely out of focus all the way back at rear infinity. AF on, super quick back to that. So it is a really nice kind of little lifesaver, so to speak. Okay, so let's bring Richard's question up here. Richard's asking, is it worth waiting for an autofocus update or an OM-1 or do you have to buy GH9 II? You definitely don't have to buy GH9 II. The focus on the OM-1, this one is still going to be fast, in my opinion, anyway, from experience. You shouldn't need to wait for an autofocus update, but you should always keep an eye on everything that's going on within the photographic industry, is my best advice for that one. And another question that I'm going to bring up just here from David. Hi, David. David's asking, can you have back button focus and start pro capture process in the shutter release button? Yeah, that's a really, really great question. So if you have disabled front button focus, let's go back to the menu. So we'll keep David's question up here so that it's relevant. If you have disabled AF here for continual autofocus, that's the front shutter button, and you choose to use pro capture, we'll just pop it into CAF here, and then we'll pop it into pro capture, just any one of them. There we go, normal pro capture. So that's up to 20 frames per second. You are focusing from the rear button. There we go. And the front shutter, if you can see there, the little arrows in the bottom corner, is starting the pro capture buffering process. So great question. You can have the back button focus, but with pro capture, you also need to be halfway pressing the front shutter to have that pro capture buffering. Disabling the front shutter in CAF does not disable the pro capture buffering at all. So hopefully that answers it quite well for you. And a great question. And I'm going to answer one more from Brandon. Oh, Brandon. Hey, Brandon. Good to see you again. Saw you today as well. This is a non-AF menu question, but it's a really, really good one. And then we'll go back to the AF menu. So on the 150 to 400mm lens, this one, how do you program the 4 black buttons below the manual focus ring? This is an exceptionally good question because it's something that people get confused about. There are 4 buttons on the front of that. I'm just going to take Brandon's question away so that you can see there. 4 buttons. You can see 2 of them just at the bottom there. There's another 2 around the other side. And a lot of people think that they are independently programmable. So you've got 4 different functions. That's not the case. So these buttons are LFN buttons. They're lens function buttons, but they all do the same job so that wherever you're handling the lens and the camera, you've always got, oops, sorry, I think I might have just been quite loud on the microphone there. You've always got access to your lens function button because there are 4 of them. So they'll all commit the same function, whatever you've assigned them to be in the button menu, to the LFN option, lens function button. Now, you've also then got a switch over there that allows you to change between LFN and preset. So if the switch is in the LFN position, those black buttons are going to give you whatever function you've assigned to LFN. If they're in the preset position, then when you press them, the focus is going to jump to the preset distance that you had pre-programmed through the preset button option on the lens. So you can press a button on the lens to preset a distance for focus. That gets locked into the preset, which is activated by any one of the 4 black buttons. So hopefully, Brandon, that clears that up for you. Great questions on this Tech Thursday. I love it. This is fantastic. Right. So let's go back to the AF menu. We covered AF in manual focus mode, and we have covered release priority. That's going to come up a lot, but the concept still remains the same about release priority. Now, page 2, some really obvious things. AF illuminator. So for those of us that are quite experienced, we know that there's a little red light on the front of the camera, red or orange light, that will flash on. It will light up if the camera detects low light conditions. And that little AF lamp is there to assist you in your focusing. It's there to light up things a little bit to get some contrast into the image. And you can switch that on or off. If you are shooting with electronic shutter, which is designated as a discrete mode, it will by default be off anyway. Okay, so you can switch it on and off, but it will be off by default if you're using the electronic shutter. Now, the next option is a really great one, the AF area pointer. Now, I get a lot of questions about AF area pointer. Which one's the best to use? Well, sadly, that's the wrong question, because the question should be, which one do I prefer to use? The AF area pointer is simply a visual aid. It doesn't change the way that the camera uses autofocus or the target mode in any way whatsoever. It simply shows you what the camera is doing in a slightly different way. So let me switch this off and we'll go right from the kind of start on this one. So when AF area pointer is off, let's go back to our main screen. Let's get Pro Capture switched off. Let's just have a normal shooting mode. And let's have CAF on. Okay, so it's really specific to CAF. It does work in SAF, but in a slightly different way. But it's really specific to how you'll see CAF. CAF is continuous autofocus, which means that when we're using the button that we've chosen to use autofocus from, I'm going to press and hold my back button now. You can hear the beep ever so slightly. You can see a little green light on the left-hand side of the screen. That's telling me that the camera is focusing. But if you look on the screen, there's no visual confirmation in terms of a box to show you where the AF point is. There's nothing, okay? Absolutely nothing. Kind of relying on the fact that you think the camera's got what it needs to get. Now, if we switch that to on one, which is the default, when you get the camera, it's set to on one anyway. And then we're going to AF on again. And then you'll see also with the little green light at the left of the screen, you'll also see just one. So I am holding AF on the back button, so it is continuously autofocusing, but you'll see only once a little flash of a green square just to briefly tell me where it's focused. Okay, it's within my cross AF target mode. So once that's gone, if I'm kind of moving around, despite the fact that the camera is still autofocusing continuously, I don't get any visual feedback on where that is. If, like me, slightly needy, because I am slightly needy and I need to know everything, I need to know what's going on, you're going to use AF area pointer on 2. And this is going to give you a consistent visual feedback of where the camera is focusing. And it's going to show you many different points, but the many different points simply represent a flat plane that it's found. So you might see 2 and you might see 10. If you see 2, it's a very narrow plane. If you see 10, it's a very wide plane. So here we go. What you're going to see now, if I press AF on, is this kind of movement around where the camera is showing you precisely where it's focusing. If I just shift my camera a little bit that way, you can see that that moves a little bit as well. And it's a continual visual feedback of the refocusing functionality. Okay. And I like that. I think it works pretty well, to be honest with you. It's a great option to have on if you are happy to see things going around like that. Now, all this time you'll see there that up there our little robin on the top of the lens has got a little gray square around him. That's because subject detection is already switched on in this camera, and the camera's just telling me that it's seen something that I've asked it to see, but it won't do anything with it because my AF target mode is nowhere near there. So we'll come on to why that's happening in a moment. So that's your AF area pointer options. On 1 for a single flash recognition confirmation of where the AF point has landed, and then it will move around invisibly within the target mode that you've given it, or on 2 to continuously see the target frame while CAF is running. I'm going to leave that section on there. Now, the option for face and eye detect is grayed out, and there will be a very good reason for that. If we press the OK button, I think we'll find that it's because subject detection is switched on. There we go. So this item cannot be selected for the following reason, because subject detection is switched on, and therefore we're not looking at people. All right, so face and eye detection in this instance is directly associated with human faces, which you can switch on and off from here or from the menu, from the super control panel as well. I will catch up with some of the questions as we get further down this page. I'm just going to let a few more come in. So then if we go past face and eye detection, we can then look at the face and eye AF button. Now, this one I think is really useful. I've had some sessions in the past where people have kind of fed back to me that they don't really see the point in it, but I'll try to explain it in a way that will make sense as to why you would want to use it, and then you can decide if it's your thing or not. So if we go into the face and eye AF button options, we have 2 options. We have front shutter release and AF on. What we can do here is, let me put you into context. We go out for a day street shooting, okay? Street photography, which is a combination of different things. It could be people, architecture, vehicles, all sorts of different things that we could be shooting in street photography. We want to be able to use face detect very quickly, and we want to be able to use our standard target modes very quickly when we're not shooting faces. And we want the camera to know when I want to focus on the face that's in the frame or when I want to focus in the building behind the face. And this is where we separate that priority from two buttons. So the front shutter release for me will normally be representing AF. Standard AF, it won't be looking for a face within that. And I can use that when I want to take pictures of anything that's not human face. And the camera will just do as it's told within either the cross or the small or the mid or the single point that I've got active. And then if I do see some people and I want to take pictures of faces, then my AF on button on the back will then prioritize looking for any faces within the scene. It'll ignore the target point completely. Now, I'm pretty sure that my little Lego man down there won't count as a face. And I've also got my subject detection on. But in that instance is where I would be separating between wanting to take a photograph of the little guy down there or just taking a picture of the lens and using the cross target mode and using the two buttons to decide between the two on that one. So super useful, really. Then, of course, we've got subject detection. Now, this, if you're going to use it a lot, you're going to build it into a custom mode. You're probably going to assign it to a button as well, because if you assign subject detection to a button, then you also benefit from the press and hold functionality within that. And that means that you press and hold the button you've assigned and then cycle the dial, either one, the front or the back. It's usually the back one that's the most convenient. And that will switch between the different types of subjects for you. So nice and easy. And obviously within there, we've got the option to turn it off. We've got cars and motorcycles. This will also do BMX bikes, road bikes, things like that. Planes, dogs and cats, which we know responds very well to most mammals, bears, things like that. But remember, it's not bear detection, so if it doesn't work, we can't be held accountable, but we get very good reports. Birds, which is fantastic, and we also get very good reports to say that some insects respond to the birds, particularly dragonflies, and then trains and locomotives as well. So you've got all those options on there. I'll take mine back to the bird setting there. And then the final option in this page is the eye detection frame. The eye detection frame is relative to the subject that you have chosen. So in this case, birds, or it could be aircraft or motorcycles or motor cars, or dogs and cats. And it's, do we want the camera to further focus on the eye of the subject that we've chosen within subject detection? And of course, most of the time you probably will, but sometimes there may be an instance where perhaps you're shooting aircraft or trains or cars where you don't want the camera to further seek the pilot or driver of that vehicle. So you might want to switch it off. Okay, let's have a look at some of these questions that are in here. Lawrence has asked a question. Let's just pop it up here. Hi, Lawrence. OM-1 with the 100 to 400, are both of them using stabilization, or is one forfeited? Should I leave IS on both the camera and the lens? My understanding is that the 100 to 400 does not have sync IS. Yes, your understanding is completely correct. The 100 to 400 does not have sync IS, which means that the IS in the lens doesn't pair with the IS in the body to create a full kind of 8 stops of stabilization, which you get from some of the other IS sync lenses. What you will get is you can choose to use lens IS priority in the menu. If you do that, it's best to use that when you're using the sort of 400mm end of the 100 to 400, and the camera will prioritize the IS in the lens because you're such a far out kind of telephoto distance, and that's much better. However, they are both, if you don't use that, they're both operating a level of stabilization. What you're going to get is 3-axis stabilization. You get pitch and yaw from the lens and roll from the camera. So you get 3-axis when using those two, but they don't synchronize up. You're not forfeiting anything unless you use IS priority in the lens, and then it'll only use the one in the lens. So you just don't get the 8 stops that you would do from the Pro Series sync lenses. So the lens I'm using today is just the 12 to 40 f2.8 version 2. That's the one I'm using. Marius, AF on is not working when using AF or MF switch on the lens, I guess. This is a really, really good question. So AF on will work if you've got AF on the lens. However, if we override that completely, if you can hear, there's a little click. That little click was me pulling back on the focus clutch that this lens has, manual focus clutch. And what that means is, despite the fact that I have let, if we go back into the menu, this is a brilliant question, Marius. I've got AF on in MF mode. That's only if you choose MF from within the camera menu or within the super control panel. If you physically pull back that pro clutch to lock it into manual focus, you're disengaging the focus by wire system, which means that none of the autofocus systems can work now. So I'm using the back button, the front button, nothing works. I am literally now locked into autofocus by lens ring only until I push it forward, and then again autofocus back again. So yeah, great question. But if you use a switch on the lens, you are effectively disengaging the focus by wire. One more, and then we'll have another look in the menu. Let's see. Roger. Hello, Roger. If I customize an AF point to be like the rectangular box, like on the EM5 III, I recall you mentioning this today in our Zoom session. How many points, horizontal and vertical, on the OM-1 would equal the same size? It's very difficult to answer that question because of the difference between the number of AF points. So your EM5 Mark III's got 121 AF points, but your OM-1's got 1,053. So I couldn't give you an exact answer on how many points horizontal and vertical would be equating to the same. I think you would need to go into the customization menu and just create a step and roll until it looks about what you'd prefer to use, because it does come down to personal preference as well. So give that a go. The customization menu for AF, which we'll have a quick look at later on, is fantastic. Let's have a look. Marius is also asking that we should replace some subject matter. We don't replace anything. We never replace things. We want additional. I don't take something away and put something else in. No, we just want to add. We want more, more, and more. But you're right. Adding things in like insects instead of trains. Oh, train enthusiasts around the world are currently up in arms, Marius. We would like to keep things and add other things in, but you never know what the future holds. So we need to, prayers to the camera gods and all that business. Okay. Right, let's go back into the menu. Let's have a little look here. Menu, please. Thank you. So we did page 2. We're into page 3. Some nice, simple explanations here as well. We had quite a bit of a penny drop moment today within the Zoom that we did, because it was all focused. Pretty much we started on the AF menu and kind of progressed through that as part of this menu course that we're doing on our events page. CAF sensitivity was one of the ones that kind of really made people think as well. Now, what you quite often think about with CAF sensitivity, or what a lot of people will think about, is that you just want it very sensitive to be the best. It's the best of the best of the best. It's not. So the thing to think about with CAF sensitivity is that it needs to change depending on the subject and the movement of that subject. If you're shooting flighty, erratically moving subjects, small ones, squirrels darting around different directions, yeah, you want it in the high so that it can refocus to different focal planes very quickly. If your subject's a lot bigger and it's moving slower, or if it's moving just in one direction and there's a potential that something may come in between you and the subject, then you actually want it all the way down here into the low settings. So let me just make this screen a big, just for 1 second, because I'm going to give you an example. That one there. Now we've got CAF sensitivity. I'm going to drag my microphone over as well. We've got CAF sensitivity at -2 here. Okay, so that's not very sensitive at all. So what that means, if I'm focusing on that lens over there, so I'm halfway pressing to focus on the lens, it means that if something kind of comes in between the camera and my subject, it's less likely to try and refocus because it's less sensitive. But if I was to create a higher sensitivity and continue to focus, then when I try and do this, then the camera is going to refocus very quickly each time, trying to get the new thing that's going in between me and the lens. So that's why you need to think about your specific subject and whether or not something's going to come between you and it in terms of the CAF sensitivity. Okay, so let's bring that back to there. That's a little bit better. This is great. I've just seen Jill's butterfly mode. Yeah, I mean, we'll add it onto the wish list. Definitely butterfly mode, without a shadow of a doubt. Although I have heard some people have had some success with bird mode and butterflies, so it's worth trying. But a dedicated one, dedicated insect, dedicated butterfly, Christmas lists, definitely. Okay, so let's move on down. CAF center priority, very, very simple. All that means within the ticked areas or any custom modes that you may have built, the autofocus is going to first run a full cycle of AF from the very central point within any target mode before it reaches out and looks at the rest of it. And it does it so quick that we don't even notice it, but it's more about composition. So it's going to look for the center rather than the edges to try and keep things balanced. So a nice, easy explanation for that one. The AF limiter is a digital version of a physical limiter switch on your lens. So some lenses have a physical limiter switch, 1.3 to 6 meters, 1.3 to infinity, 6 meters to infinity, etc. With the digital one, which you can switch on or off, you can pre-program in 3 specific distances, a point A to point B distance to work with. These are just default set examples. And then remember, we talked about release priority. The same principles apply here in release priority. Now, this one is set to on, because it's usually when you're using AF limiter, you're probably using continual autofocus. So the default is set to enable an out of focus shot to be taken so it can move on to the next one and try and gain focus that way. And remember, these are all kind of like long extreme edges of can it focus and can it not. That's really useful. And you can assign a button to be your AF limit button to switch it on and off. And you can also then press and hold that button and cycle through to choose the options 1, 2, or 3. Your AF scanner, this used to be a dual option thing in the OMDs. It's now a single option for on or off. It simply means is if there's really low light, if it gets really dark, if the camera detects that it's very low light or very low contrasty, will it even try to focus? If it's on, it will. If it's off, it won't even try to focus because it will just trigger a continual hunting process. But again, depending on what you shoot will depend on whether or not you use an option like that. And then AF focus adjustment, really, really simple on this one. If you find, for any example, that this one's actually preset to +3 because we were doing it this afternoon, actually, in the Zoom session. If you find for any reason that you feel on a lens, and we were talking about it, this is not necessarily on more modern Zuiko lenses or even other Micro Four Thirds lenses, but perhaps on lenses that you're using adapters with and things like that. If you find that there's any front or rear focusing, you can switch the autofocus adjustment on. And then you can go to fine tuning value and you can make those changes. So for example, let's say if I was to go all the way to +20 and then now go and autofocus with my AF on button, then what you'll see there is that actually, if we take that shot now, let's see, it told me that it focused and it told me that it grabbed focus. But if we zoom in, that is actually very much out of focus, and it's the wall at the back that's in focus because I've used that fine focus adjustment to push the focus further back. So be delicate when you're using it, but it's not the end of the world if you mess it up, because you can just come into fine tuning, press and hold, press the down arrow key and bring it back to 0, which will give you no tuning at all. And just press OK there. And then now when we use our AF, and we check on that focus, we can see that by bringing it back to 0, yeah, we've now got great focus here. Oops, I was just trying to do a comparison there. Let me bring that back up. Too many fingers trying to do too many things here. Let's see, there we go. Zoom in on that. Go down a little bit. And then if I scroll between that one and the one that we used focus adjustment on, I'm going to have to reach over, guys. Sorry, you'll miss my head there. So it's that one where you can see it says AF +/- +20 on the right-hand side of the preview, telling us that we focus adjusted it. which is good because you might take it and think, why the heck? What in heck's name is that? That's terrible. Oh, that's because I threw 20 plus AF adjustment on it. That's fine. And that's perfectly acceptable. So that's a really, really useful thing. Okay, let's get back in. Let's take us on to the next mode. Really simple. Movie AF. We can pretty much race through this tab. The option is what AF mode are you using when you use video mode on the top dial. If you're like me, you'll use continual autofocus. If you're a legend, you're amazing, videographer of the year, you'll use manual focus, but it's entirely up to you what you use there. The CAF speed and the CAF sensitivity kind of speak for themselves. CAF sensitivity works in the same way that we already discussed in single autofocus. CAF speed is about how quickly your camera refocuses between targets. Now, you don't want, quite often in video, you don't want a snap refocusing, you want a gentle refocusing. So if I was to put my hand up to my camera now, there's a nice gentle refocusing. If I take it away, then there should be a nice gentle refocusing back if the camera sees me at all. There we go. Too slow. So in this instance, I would be changing the CAF speed to a little bit quicker because it was a bit too slow to refine me again. But there's a fine balance, and depending on what you're shooting, you'll need to change those. Now, page 5, this is a very interesting one. We talked briefly about custom modes and creating different patterns. So if we go into here, what we can do is we can check and uncheck options that are available to us when we choose our AF target mode. So from the super control panel, or by nudging the joystick in one direction, you then kind of raise up your current target mode, and you can use the dials to sync through or cycle through whichever ones you want. And you'll be cycling through whatever's ticked here. So if we were to untick some of these, you wouldn't be able to cycle through them. But what you can also do is you can add in a custom mode. Now, the reason why I usually point out C1 is because if we want to look at the default single mode on the camera, and this is really super important, because what you'll see is that there is sometimes people will talk about the OM-1 and say, well, in single autofocus, it doesn't focus in certain situations. Now, it's really important to assess why that happens, and it's a very good explanation. If we look at the screen here, the graphics demonstrating exactly which focus points are active in single focus mode, single, very precise single focus mode. All of those very pale gray dots are the AF pixels that are active. Those are the areas that you're going to pick focus on. All of the dark gray dots are inactive. They're not available. So if you're using single autofocus mode on a very blank wall with very few things to focus on, and none of those light pixels are anywhere near that, it's not going to focus. Okay. So bear that in mind. However, if you want to spread that out and become much better at single autofocus in any particular zone, then you can go down to the C1, and you can see there that by default already the C1, all of those AF zones are light gray. So they're all active. If we press the right arrow key, we can see there that we have all of them active. That's the steps. So if you see on the other side, if you press info, our steps are at 1. If we press info again to come back to the size, it's a 3 by 3. But if I don't want a 3 by 3, then I can just bring that down to a 1 by 1. So now I've got a single AF target mode that has access to every single AF pixel area within that sensor grid. Okay, so it's nice and easy. So I press OK. That's locked in. I press OK to put a check in the box. All right. Now I'm going to go over and I'm going to show you the difference between those. So I'm just going to tap my joystick to raise the AF target mode. And then I'm going to use my rear dial to cycle through. I'm going to first select single, okay? And if you see single, as I move it across, there are some pretty healthy gaps, jumps in between how that moves, okay? So it's missing areas. That's those dark gray points within the custom mode that we saw. If I now cycle through that to my C1, my first custom target grid, and I move it around, you'll see now there's much better incremental movement within that. Okay, so that's really, really key to be able to know and change those options like that. But let's bring it back to the cross for our demos today. Good. Okay, so that's a really interesting one to have in your AF target mode settings. Remember, you're only going to have access to whatever's checked here, whatever's available. If it's not checked, it's not available within the super control panel. All right. The next option is orientation linked target AF, and this is really good. I can't demonstrate it today on this one because I've got my camera fixed on a tripod. But what this means is I can go into this option and I can tell the camera to remember how I've set my target mode and my target point in whichever orientation I'm holding the camera. So portrait or landscape, I need it to remember whether I've got a single or a cross, or whether it was in the top corner or in the middle, in both of those directions. And when I change the orientation, it will automatically switch backwards and forwards between those options. So that's a really, really good one. The next option is to set the home point. So if you find that your AF target mode's wandered off somewhere, or you've been pressing the joystick and it's been all over the place, and you want to instantly bring it back to a position that you consider the home point, that's normally the center, and it's normally your chosen target mode. So I usually pick a cross in the center. You can go into set home. You can choose the target mode. In this instance, I'll choose cross, and then you can choose the point. So in this instance, we put it in the middle, so that when we assign a button to be our AF HP or AF home point, we press it once wherever the AF target mode is, and whatever mode it is, it'll zip back to the middle into the mode that we've chosen in here. Select screen settings for AF, really easy. It just tells the camera how you want to use your dials and your cursors. So by default, the front and rear dials will change the AF mode. So the cross, the large, the mid, the single, it will cycle through those once you've raised it up on the screen. And then the arrow keys will change the position. But if you press OK, you can change that, or you can completely disable either of those actions as well. So quite often people will disable the cursor keys, the north, south, east, west arrows, so to speak, because sometimes they accidentally press those because of the location. Loop settings are a bit interesting. Very, very simple. All that means, if you select a loop setting, we go to loop 1 and go back to our screen. If I start to move my AF point, when it gets towards the edge, it will just loop back on itself. It just comes back, doing little circles. And if you do it at the bottom or the top, it'll do the same thing as well. Again, it depends how you like that. If you choose loop 2, then instead of it going all the way around or all the way around that way in the same position, what it will actually do is, as it leaves the screen, it will re-enter it a row above, all the way like that. And it will do the same if you're going up and down. It will move columns across as it goes through as well. And if we take that back to loop 1, you also have the via all option, which means that every time it goes off the screen, before it comes back on the screen, it will select all AF points like that, and then off. So it's giving you all as you go off the screen. And you can see as I select all, the camera is suddenly kicking in and going, all, hey, there's a bird. You asked me to look for a bird. I can focus on this bird because you've given me the option to use all those target points. But then sadly, when I bring my cross back in, it goes, oh, yeah, there's the bird. But sadly, I can't do anything with it right now. And then the AF targeting pad is grayed out in this instance because that relates to the rear screen and how it behaves when you've got your eye up to the viewfinder. So on the camera here, if I have the AF targeting pad on, when my eye's up to the viewfinder, yes, I know I'm strange because I'm using the wrong eye. Trust me, it kind of has to be done in this instance. For me anyway, when I'm looking through the viewfinder, if I want to move, if the AF target pad is on and I want to move the AF target mode around, I can stick my thumb very firmly on the back screen despite the fact that it's off, and I can sort of wiggle it around and move it around and do that. Whilst my eye's up there as well, if I'm finding that my nose is touching it, which it does, I can disable it by double tapping the rear screen whilst my eye's up to the viewfinder. So super, super useful, that one. Okay, let's hit some questions in here. This is one here. Larry Ross, is the AF limiter release priority separate from the general release priority settings? It is, Larry, yes. So if you're using the AF limiter, the release priority settings for that mode take over. They override everything in the background. Good question. Oh, morning, Philip. Sorry, I thought that was another question then, but we're going to say morning to Philip anyway. Morning, Philip from Brisbane in Australia. Roger, you're telling me that I answered the question on the custom AF point. Perfect. That's good to know. That was in regards to the EM5 Mark III rectangular point. Let's see here. I try to read them before they come up, but I'm going to pop this one up and we'll read it from here from Grog Hunter. Still out hunting the Grog Hunter? Excellent stuff. Hope you find some. I've set the C1 for exactly the reason you state, with extra AF points, but notice when I set for all focus points, I still get a center square, like if I'd chosen a single point. Can that be changed? What that means is that you've got center priority on. So it just means that if we go to page 3 and look at center AF priority, it usually means that that is set to, it's going to use it for all anyway. So we don't even have the option to turn that off, but it is going to use the center CAF center priority if that's the most effective focal point within all. But generally speaking, I don't recommend using all unless you've also switched on some form of subject detection, in which case the subject detection will take over from that. And then you'll follow up to that was it doesn't do it if you set any other shape of AF target. No, it won't, because all is always designed to hit that center if it can. And it just seems like in every circumstance, it probably can. Subject detection will override that in all, though. Hope that helps. Okay, so in the final page of our AF menu, how have we got on? Wow, it's so close to the end. We're really sort of tucking it in here. I'm gonna kind of put up with, nobody's going to come on with like a digital crop and pull me off stage. I'm going to go to the very end, which will only be a few minutes over, so I don't think anyone will shout at me today. The final options here are more relative to manual focus, and some really good options in terms of manual focus assistance. So if we go into the MF assistant, you can see that we have got 3 options to assist us when we're using manual focus. Now, one of those is switched off, but again, remember that OM1, if we highlight the option and press OK, it'll tell us why. Now, the AF mode is preventing magnify being switched on in this case. So the reason for that is because we have continual autofocus switched on. So we take it back to single autofocus. We should then get our option for magnify back. Let's switch that on and see what happens. All of these options will kick in only when we turn the manual focus ring and the camera or lens is set to manual focus. All right. So let's get rid of my horrible face off that corner there, and we can see exactly what's going on. Let's pull this microphone a bit closer. Now I'm going to start to turn the manual focus ring. Let's use this in focus clutch, actually. So I'll pop that back, and you see there that it did jump into manual focus straight away. As I turn that focus ring, you can see here that it's showing me a magnified image, and we've jumped into nothing, okay, because of where the AF point is set. Now I could move that around with the arrow keys. I can use the arrow keys to go left and right and things like that, and that's fantastic. But I have 2 issues. Primarily, it's probably too zoomed in. All right. So what I need to do is, while it's active, and it will stop. If you stop turning the focus ring, that will stop. So if I need to change the magnification level, I will just turn the focus ring backwards and forwards continually whilst rotating the rear dial until I get to the magnification point that I want. I've just scrolled it back to 3 times. I can go all the way to 14, or I can come back to 3, but I'm going to leave it at 3. Now I'm going to stop focusing, and you can see there that it stops magnifying. If I want to be really specific about where it magnifies, then I can actually bring up my AF target mode with the joystick, and I can center that over the area that I want to the magnification to instantly go to. Okay, so I've put it over my robin, and then I'm going to start to manually focus, and it instantly goes to my robin, and I can find him just there and find focus very, very nicely. So easy. And remember, whilst focusing, if you turn the dial, you can get more magnification out of that as well. Now, the same principle applies for if you choose the next option, which is focus peaking. So if we switch that on, I'm actually going to switch magnify off, because the 2 on together can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming. So you've got to be really careful about how you use that. It can be a bit too much. You also get a slightly lower resolution live view when using these options as well. So let's go back to our main screen. Now, it's not going to magnify, it's not going to jump into any specific part of the screen, but when I start to turn the focus ring, we're going to see this colored, lovely sort of colorful flash across the areas that are going to be in focus. This by no means shows you your depth of field. It is simply showing you which focal plane the lens is currently seated on. So you can see there in red. Now, if I stop turning the ring, the focus peaking stops. If I want to change the settings of focus peaking, such as the intensity or the color or anything else like that, I can either do it in the menu, which we'll go back to in a second, or whilst turning the ring backwards and forwards, keeping that alive, I can press the info key once, and then I can choose the peaking color through black, white, red, or yellow, the intensity, and whether or not the image brightness adjusts when I use it. So let's leave this on standard yellow, image brightness adjust. Halfway press my shutter to go back to a free screen, and then start to turn that ring again. And you can see there that the image brightness adjusts and throws in the yellow peaking at the standard intensity that I have chosen. So really, really useful. Now in the menu, those settings are in here in the peaking settings. You can choose that from same three options from the menu. There is one more manual focus assistant that's helpful, and that's the focus indicator. And if we switch this one on, it's simply going to tell us the direction in which we are trying to focus. This is really useful if you're using the macro lenses like the 60 or the 90 or the 30, because sometimes with such great amounts of manual focus needed, you'll be turning the ring quite some time before you realize you've actually been focusing the wrong way. So the focus indicator, when you start to manually focus, pops up at the bottom, and it tells you whether or not you're focusing towards you, which is the little flower, or away from you, which is the mountain range. So that's a really, really helpful indicator to have on in manual focus, particularly when you're shooting macro. Let's disable manual focus. There we go. Just briefly, while we're on the subject of this bird over at the top of the lens here, what you'll see here now is that I've got the white square around the bird, a further smaller square around its face and eye, because we've got subject eye detection on. And that white square has 4 separate corners on the outside. That's telling me that if there was more than one subject on the screen, this is the active priority. Now that's active because my AF target mode is right on top of the bird, or very close to it. So if I move that away, you'll see there that the bird's very bright white double-edged box goes away, and it becomes a gray box to simply tell me that it's seeing a bird. So it's very important that you're using an AF area that at least touches some part of the detection zone here. Okay, really, really important, because if it's not, it doesn't matter whether or not it sees it or not, it won't focus on it. So what I tend to use is if there's only one subject within the frame, it's perfectly acceptable to use all AF, because in all AF, it doesn't matter wherever the subject is, the AF will find it, because it's assessing the whole frame. If there's more than one subject and you want to be more specific, then you can choose a smaller zone and get that specific zone closer to your chosen subject. So if there were 2 or 3 robins on there, but I wanted this one, I would get my cross AF target mode up near that one there. Right, so once we've covered that, let's go back in. We've done focus peaking settings, the preset MF distance. So we talked about the fact that you've got a pre-MF option in your AF options. In here, you can choose to set that distance and choose whether or not you're using meters or feet, which is useful depending on where you are in the world. You can decide to activate or deactivate that manual focus clutch. Now, there needs to be a certain amount of eyeballing action that goes on here. We've all done it. We've all taken that camera and lens combination out of a bag, handled it in the wrong way, not noticed that the manual focus clutch has pulled back into manual focus and then gone. Why is it not focusing? Camera's broken. That's normally what's happened. Now, if that happens a lot and overriding that functionality is more important to you than having it, then here you can change it to inoperative. So really key. You can also change the direction of the focus ring, whether or not it focuses to infinity or closer, clockwise or anti-clockwise. Now, if you're used to what it does, don't change it. If you're coming from a system where the focus ring went the other way and you need to make it easier on yourself, feel free to change it. Really, really nice to have that option. And then the reset lens option, if you have this on or off, I'm just going to highlight that for the moment. Let's press info, you get the information around it. When we set this to on, it resets the position of the lens when the power is turned off. And when it's set to off, the focus will stay where it was last left. So if your camera's going on and off, if it's sleeping or not, you don't want it to keep recovering that position. Then you need to have the reset lens option off. That is all 6 pages of the AF tab breakdown. Now, it is a bit of a kind of a sort of steamroll through all of those options, but hopefully some of that information has made some of them easier to use, or even kind of like pointed you in the right direction of using them as well. Let's just see if anyone's got any final questions before our session comes to a close. That over an hour has gone super quickly today. It's been a very long day, many meetings, couple of Zoom workshops, lots of things going on. And then we've got today's Tech Thursday, and then tomorrow we're going to start celebrating OM System anniversaries for OM System Day. There's all sorts of things going on after now, basically. We're going to be all over the place. All your favorite presenters are going to be around doing different things. Regional languages are all going on, so you can get it wherever you, whichever your regional language is. We've got something going on for you. But for now, I think that is the end of this particular Tech Thursday. I will be back with the rest of the gang in an AMA during November. There'll be a Tech Thursday in November. There's loads of stuff going on over the next few days on all the social platforms and YouTube, so keep your eye out for those. Remember to check in on the OMDS events page as well. Everything that we do is on there. It's such a wealth of information. For anybody that's done the OM-1 menu course with me, we did session 1 2 weeks ago, session 2 today. I've added a third one because we just didn't have time to get through all of that. So there's a third one in the system now as well. And I will be running all 3 of those again in November. So if you want to join, really kind of heavy, it is an intense session, an hour and a half for each course to try and get your head around the full OM-1 menu. Then keep your eye out for those. So OMDS events, the YouTube channel, tons going on. And if you need any of us, you just reach out at any stage and we'll be happy to help. But for now, I'm going to have to say goodbye. It's 8 o'clock. It's been a long one. It's time for dinner and a sit down. So wherever you are in the world, whatever time of day it is, I hope that your progression through the rest of this day is a wonderful one. And I will see you on another session sometime in the future. So bye for now.